Hey guys, what's going on? David Avalon here with my co-host Robert Drysdale for another episode of Breaking the Guard. This time, not 1 month apart.
Like 3 days, 4 days.
Yeah. So we're getting better.
Yeah, it's just like it's the travel schedule, man. Cause like if I'm not traveling, you are, and then sometimes I got the kids. There's always something going on, right? We don't for both of us to get quiet time, even though we live like literally like 4 blocks away from each other. No excuses, really. I mean, we could probably be more organized, Dave. We could probably pull it off once a week, but it's not always easy. You know, like shit is changing. My schedule, especially, is like all over the place.
Well, like today, I bribed you with bison, so that made it easy, right?
That's the only reason I came here, by the way, because Dave probably showed me a picture of him like grilling bison. I'm like, all right, I'm on my way for another episode of Breaking the Guard. That was great, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my favorite meat.
No, it's super lean, man, clean. It's, you know, like I've gone through a phase like, I'm going to eat less meat. And then I hear guys be like, you're pretty much carnivores. All you want to eat is meat. I love meat. I crave it.
Yeah.
I go back and forth on the ethical issue. Like, you know, the animals are poorly treated. Oh, man, I love it. You know, it's not an easy one, man. Like I could never move away from meat, but I've told myself many times that I'm going to eat less meat and just try to just maybe have 10% of my diet be meat-based, maybe less. I just can't do it, man. Like, I grew up in Brazil, eat barbecue like twice a week.
Yeah, no, I'm going to say you're from Brazil. Like, South America in general, you eat a lot of meat.
It's cheap, too. Like, poor people eat steak in Brazil like, every week, no problem. You know, it's very, compared to here at least, it's very, very accessible. You know, so.
Yeah. And I don't have any ethical issues eating meat.
I go back. Here's the thing. I see. Like, you watch. I don't know if you guys are listening. You've seen one of those documentaries on how the animals are treated. It's awful. It's terrible.
Yeah.
That part gets to me. Not the fact that like, oh, I think that all species or animals are created equal. Like, no, I don't believe that. I think there is a hierarchy, and yeah, I can eat a cow because a cow can't eat me. You know, it's nature. I would prefer animals that are treated ethically. Like, I would rather buy grass-fed. Put it like that.
Oh, for sure. I would agree with the same. I also see it from the other perspective. Even if I didn't care about the animal's welfare itself as far as it living a happy life, if it is living a life trapped up in a pen, walking around in its own shit, you know, it's not going to be a good food either. You know what I mean?
And it's ethically and exactly. It's health-wise, taste-wise.
So even if you're selfish, like you don't want to eat something that's been mistreated.
That's a good point.
That's why, like, to me, like the hunting is probably like the most ethical way of getting your meat, because animals living free, wild, the way it's supposed to, and then you just boom, getting it really quick. You know, it doesn't have to suffer for many years or live, you know, kind of like, I think chickens probably have it the worst of any animal.
They get pinned up really.
They're literally like in the Matrix, you know, where like their eggs are being taken away. And
it is kind of like the Matrix for them, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a freaking, like, in particular the places that are sketchy, sometimes the feed is like ground up chicken that's getting refed into.
You know how crazy fast they grow the chickens too,
it's crazy.
With hormones. Like, it's like in a matter of like weeks or days, they go from birth to adulthood.
They had said doing, again, like we could be butchering this, but from what I recall, during like the avian flu scares, like if they had to cull the entire chicken population and essentially give birth to a new chicken population that would be like genetically resistant to this avian flu, it would take like 2 years to replace the population of all the chickens globally.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, because we just consume. I mean, the thing is, the thing about it is, we've never eaten so much meat. Like, meat has not been like it's readily accessible to everyone. Like, it was a treat. You know, not every place had easy game. Depends. Like, some populations had easy game, tons of protein, right? But you know, many hunter and gatherer populations, they were protein deficient because of where they happened to be in geographically, right? So very dramatically. It's not that it was like, oh, we were eating that much meat. Some people barely had access to it. There's a super interesting book. I read it back in college. Not really related to, you know, meat per se, but talks about the diversity of the globe and how that affects how civilizations develop. Called Guns, Germs, and Steel. Jared Diamond. Very famous book, very popular, won a bunch of prizes. There's a documentary about it. If you don't want to read the book, watch the documentary, Guns, Germs, and Steel. And the central argument of the book is, you know, because of evolution and how some species evolved in some places, some continents were at a geographic advantage in terms of the rise of civilization. So you can explain the rise of civilization, the Fertile Crescent, what is now the Middle East, Northern Africa, because They had the pig, they had the cow, they had horses, they had, I think, ducks, they had chicken. They also had wheat, barley. What else do they have? Basically everything. I mean, just a real. I mean, and you go to places like Australia. What do the Aborigines have?
Yeah.
They're not domesticated. They're not animals. You can't domesticate a kangaroo.
Yeah.
You can't domesticate a koala. So they're limited as to what they can do. Whereas a horse, you think about a horse, what kind of advantage that will give you, like in terms of like competing with other people's, or just think about like transport.
For
Think
sure.
about warfare. Think about leather, bones, meat, milk. It's huge. So if people don't have a certain animals, they're a huge disadvantage, right? It's a great book. It's fascinating theory when you think about it. But it goes to explain why civilization arose where it arose, because it has not just the animals, but also the plants necessary to actually farm. Because if you don't have plants you can farm, like you're lost. How are you going to start? How are you going to settle and start a civilization, start a village, and make that transition from a hunter and gatherer society to farming, right? To a post agricultural society. Really interesting read. Not sure why I remember that. We're talking about geography, but yeah, like it's highly recommended, man. Like it gives you a good idea, because I think there's something people trying to explain. In the past, they have done this. Today has been politically incorrect. Explain why some people came out on top, right? Why did this people colonize that people and not that or the other way around? It must be race, right? And that was the explanation 200 years ago. Clearly, white Europeans are superior. And it can't be the case, because there's a moment in history where Chinese are far more advanced than Europeans were. There's a moment in history where doctors in Northern Africa, like they had a very good understanding of medicine, right? Of how to treat disease. Whereas doctors in Europe, like there's like how they would treat mental illness back in the dark, I still call it the dark ages. I know you're not supposed to say that anymore, but it was pretty dark, man. They would cut a cross on the back of your head and let the demons bleed out. And that was treatment. And that was Europe for you. These people didn't shower either. Yeah. So that's to develop these super germs. Like the germs became like their biological warfare against people they were colonizing. So it's not like there's any sense of real superiority. It's just that they happen to be in a place in time in history that gave them a huge advantage to colonize other people, right? But like a lot of the inventions that allowed Europe to colonize the world, if you take a close look at them, they're not from Europe. They're from Northern Africa or the Middle East or China. They're not of actually, if you look at the most inventions, like cartography, metal, like bronze, iron, the compass, they're not European inventions, right? But Europe had to be in a place in time with that technology was made available that allowed them to colonize the rest of the world, right? So I'm not doing the book justice, but it goes to explain like why the world turned out the way it is. But his main argument goes back to geography. What do a given people have available for them to compete against other people?
Yeah, it sounds similar to what I've read, Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, where similar concept in that you have a particularly talented person, but he's in the right place, the right time, with the proper resources to exploit the talent. Yeah. And it goes, as you know, even in the sports, there's many athletic people all over the place, but some of them are just not in the position where they can train with somebody who's can elevate their talent to the next level. And then just like you said, I know, I think you've told me this, but like there's guys doing jiu-jitsu in the favelas are like superstars, but like nobody knows them because they're just, unfortunately they just...
And they get someone pregnant when they're 20 and then they're gone. They just got to get a job now, like career's over, just like that, Whereas if you had rich parents, they're like, okay, you can continue your jiu-jitsu career, we'll help take care of the child. These are advantages. Dude, luck is a huge... People underestimate the role of luck. It's all about, like when it comes to athletics or business or all these other things, we see success, right? And people go, oh, you're successful because you're hard work. Like hard work is half the equation. The other half is what you're talking about, right? Like where you are. Like, I mean, if Michael Jordan had been born in Zimbabwe, you think he'd be Michael Jordan?
Right, yeah.
Like these things matter. Like
there's a lot of, that people don't like using luck. And I understand that as well because it's kind of discrediting somebody. Yeah. It shouldn't be seen that way because even if you're very lucky, you still have to prepare for it, right? Like, I could be born, having a basketball player like genes, even though clearly I don't, right? But let's say I was like superstar. I still have to practice. I still have to train. I still have to compete. I still have to show up. You know what I mean? So Because sometimes people are like, oh, that guy's a genetic freak. He was always going to be really good. It's like, I've seen a lot of people who are genetic freaks that are not good at all.
Yeah.
And don't even
Many.
train. Yeah. So like, it's a combination of things. But
So many factors.
But like, particularly when we're talking about elite level athletes, there's obviously some luck involved in where they were, their location, resources, and genetics, that all of them combined. Like, I think that's what made martial arts very interesting early on, was that there wasn't as much as a luck factor because we didn't really have high level athletes.
Yeah.
You look at UFC 1, like Keith Hackney, a sumo wrestler, a bunch
made it more interesting.
Yeah, because then it was more about technique and battle will.
Yeah.
And I think more will than anything, to be honest, because if you look back at some of those early ones, they're like, man, the technique's horrendous.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
they thought they knew how to fight.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's easy for us to judge, but like,
because nobody knew anything. Yeah.
But compared to today, it's what you're saying, man. Like, it's so important if people don't realize is the role of that genetics, environment, like even your upbringing, like even your environment. I talk a lot about this one. Your social environment is super important. Having that support network makes things a lot easier, man. Like life can be very difficult if every person around you is trying to like convince you to get a job or do something you don't want to do, But the thing is, people have this view, and I talk a little bit about this in my book, and it's always bothered me. They have this, I call it a binary view. It's A or B. It's black or white. There's no nuance in the world. And the world is like, people aren't good. Oh, that guy's a liar. There's no such thing as that guy is a liar. That guy lied is a good statement. That guy is a liar is like an idiotic statement. Everyone's a liar. Everyone lies, right? Like, who doesn't lie? Who's never done anything dishonest in their life? Like, is it really anyone who could say, I've never lied? I'm like, so everyone's a liar. It's just that, when are you lying? So that person lied in that event. There's nuance, is my point, right? Why is it that people have such a hard time seeing that things can coexist? Like, you can have luck and work ethic coexisting in perfect harmony. Is it so hard to understand? Like, if you tell me that I'm lucky, no, I'm telling you, yes, you were lucky. I'm not saying that you didn't work hard as well. I'm saying that these things coexist in perfect harmony.
I'm laughing because it reminds me of an argument I had with my girlfriend Jamie when I went to go hunting. Yeah. She's like, "Oh, you're just doing this just as a hobby, right?" I'm like, "No, I'm doing this because one, I want to be able to bring in my own meat. Two, if you're actually successful, you save money, a considerable amount of money bringing in something. And three, I'm going to have fun doing it." But like in her view, it's
one or the other.
It was only a hobby of fun. She just wanted me to admit it's only about hobby fun. I'm like, look, if it was just about shooting, and that would be like a sport shooting. Yeah. If I wasn't allowed to take the meat or harvest the meat, I would not go hunting. Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, I don't believe you." I'm like, "Oh." You don't know too well.
No, but I see what you're saying. Like, people have that. It's very common. I do this too. I think we all do it at some point, where we go, it's this or that because we're tied into a certain view, like a certain narrative. But like if you pay close attention, man, I think most situations there's a lot going on. It's just not only one force or two in play. Sometimes you have multiple forces in play, and that's what makes human behavior so complex. It's not one. It's not linear, man. It's like all this influx of inputs and different kind of pressures and different kind of wills. Even within yourself, there's conflict. Like, Dave wants to do this. Well, no, sometimes Dave wants to do complete different opposite things. You have part of you that wants to go, I'm going to eat. And there's a part of you wants to go, I want to go home. Like, it's not always, it's very conflicting. This is why, like, I think language a lot of times makes communication difficult because language tends to be this or that. There's not a lot of, we can't always say exactly what we mean. It's difficult to do it. Because you have an idea in your head, it's something that's, let's say, something within that gray area, but language is always, it's black. It doesn't always give you the tools to describe what you're trying to say. So a lot of times I'm saying, I'm arguing something with you, and you're reading something completely different, and we're arguing about something. We don't even agree on what we're arguing about. And that's that's a problem everywhere. If you pay attention, people are constantly doing. They're arguing about things, and if you stop asking questions, you go, what is it that you guys are actually arguing about? And you realize they're actually arguing about two different things, but they're using the same word to describe it. I see this a lot. I see this in politics a lot. I see this in, like, even at home in debates, like I'm arguing with people. Sometimes I have to stop, like, okay, what is it exactly that we're disagreeing about? And a lot of times you'll find that you have a lot more agreement than disagreement. It's just that you got to get the language down. Yeah, we can't always see that these things coexist, right? You start paying attention, there's a lot of these things that coexist. But people do get offended if you say that talent, if you say that they're lucky, they don't like to hear that. Whereas, like, I've reached a conclusion. I'm exceptionally lucky. Like, I got so lucky in my life. Like, think about it. I mean, you just started looking at things that had to go because I think you know the you have to take the good and the bad too. Like some of the bad things, they seem like awful things at the time. They turn out to be some of the greatest things that's ever happened to you.
Yeah.
Like you just gotta, you know, like Nietzsche has got this concept. He calls it amor fati, right? The love of fate. You're supposed to love your fate, whatever it is. The bad is a lesson. The good is gonna enjoy, you know. But it's part of the cycle, man. It's part of life. He's gonna have the good and bad, but not to acknowledge the role of luck. I think it's not just. Yeah, it's almost like you have to. Because it's easy to judge people like, oh, you didn't make it as far as I did in life, you know? And then you take a look at your life, like, wait a second, man. Like, dude, I lived with my mom until I was like 24 in Brazil. She took care of me financially. Like, that gave me time, right? She kicked me out of the house. I've been different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I was in Brazil, not Paraguay. Brazil happens to be a place for jiu-jitsu at the time, you know? I have an American passport. That made my life so much easier. I was born here. Right? So I have my life is so much easier than it is for some of my Brazilian friends who are also in Brazil, train jiu-jitsu, but they had to struggle so much more to be able to live here, right? Whereas to me, it was just like, I don't even know what it's like to apply to it. I've never applied for a visa in my life, you know that? Because any country I go to, I got 2 passports, right? Little things like that. You know, I'm healthy. Like, it's easy to take it for granted and say, like, oh, it's all me. Like, no, man, there's a lot, not to mention the people in my life. Start looking at the people in your life that make your life easier, that allow you to live the life that you want to live.
I think it just, by acknowledging some of the gifts that you had just by being born into existence, it's just being grateful.
Yeah.
Acknowledging the opportunities that you may have had that other people wouldn't have had. You know, just like, I mean, even something as simple as just having good parents, which
huge, dude. That's probably the most important one.
Yeah, you know, and like you don't control that, right? Like you, as a kid, you have no impact on that whatsoever. So that's kind of a lottery in a sense. Like you got good parents, and you're already set up significantly well compared to a massive amount of the population. I feel very fortunate. I had great parents. I still do, and I have a really good relationship. And I'm sure like you with your mom, you know, like they backed me through the whole martial arts thing. Even though my family's professional family, like engineers and lawyers and doctors. When you're like, oh, I'm gonna do martial arts, everybody's like, it's a hobby, right?
Yeah, same. Yeah.
You know, so like just having someone support you there is huge.
Yeah.
Because being able to stay in that martial arts journey takes support.
Yeah.
It's because, as you know, when you start up, you're not making anything. Especially, well, maybe nowadays it's different, but like when we got going,
there's no reward in sight.
Yeah.
Like there's no guarantee you're ever. I mean, I thought I was going to be broke for the rest of my life. I was convinced. I was okay. I'd made my peace with it, actually.
Yeah.
You know?
So like the goals were different. I feel like early martial artists were more about the development and teaching. Like there's something very fulfilling about passing on knowledge to somebody, right? Like,
yes, I'm glad you touched on that one.
And you know, like for example, here, it's crazy. I think this is the first time I actually had lunch with you. As far as like I made you a lunch, right? To me, that's something that I enjoy. I can make something for my friend and that he enjoyed it. That's like a good way for me, like of sharing something that I have. And martial arts knowledge is the same.
Yeah.
Especially when I can teach something to somebody and see it make a profound impact on their life. Like
it's rewarding.
They get confidence, so they might in turn teach somebody else and help them. Like whenever I have stories of someone using self-defense in something that I taught, I'm like, okay, this is far more valuable than somebody winning like a world title.
Yeah.
Like I had actually taught a self-defense seminar at a sorority in Fort Myers. And it was like one of my former students. She was one of the heads of the sorority. She said, "Oh, you know, come over and teach the girls stuff." And I brought like 4 guys. It was like 60 girls there. And we taught them all basic guard, arm bar, triangle choke, rear naked choke. You know, and you know, they're college girls. Everybody's laughing, and you know, I'm like, I'm not sure if anybody actually learned anything here. You know, people are messing around. The following weekend, the girl calls me, goes, "Hey, I just wanted you to let you know one of the girls was attacked by her boyfriend, but apparently a knife or gunpoint, and she armbarred him, broke his arm, and was able to call the cops and saved her life." I was like, damn.
Yeah, man, that's a home run.
That's a home run, you know.
That's a
like,
big win.
It's amazing. Like, saved that woman's life, you know, and that's like, that's impactful. You know, we have, and that's just a handful of stories. I'm sure you've had many of those as well. So that's like the value, you know, like being able to change someone's life and in a positive impact.
You want to think that, like, you know, I have this as a measuring, something that for some reason always been somewhat in the back of my mind. I think a lot about dying. I'm not scared of dying, but I think a lot about death, right? And I go like, what would I want to be? My deathbed is something that's always like haunting me. It's like, my last thought, I want it to be a very positive one.
Yeah.
I have that in my, like, I don't know what kind of life I'm living all the way to the end, but I want my last few thoughts to be happy thoughts. I'm like, I did more good than bad, because you're going to do bad. There's no way around it. You fucked someone over. You've done something. They're not even aware of the shit you've done wrong sometimes. You do something wrong. You don't even know. Oh, like 5 years later, oh, man, that was messed up, right? Matter of maturity. Sometimes you don't even know. But you would like to look back and go, I've done more good than bad. Like the positive outweighed the negative, And I think that's a good way of looking at things. And I think that martial arts does do that. And I think people miss out on that, though. We become so selfish. And I think this is where, like, it's cliche to say that money poisons everything. But, man, it's kind of true.
Yeah.
It is true. Like, it really is. I remember, like, talking about the old days again. Like, you trained because you loved jiu-jitsu. There was zero expectation to get a. I mean, if you got a dude, when I got my first sponsor, Dave, I won this like regional title in Brazil. It was a purple belt, and the world championship was in a week. And the guys, hey man, you compete in the world championship? I'm like, yeah. If I give you one of my gis, will you wear it? I'm like, what? I'm getting a free gi. It's like how much? Like $100. I was so happy. I had one gi. I'm a sponsored athlete. Yeah. Like I was so happy, Dave. But that's not why we did it, is my point. Like, yeah, you can enjoy those moments, but I think that a lot of people are doing it they want to make money. They want to be popular. They want to be famous. They want that recognition. And I think that they miss out on all this other stuff that we're talking about, which is more important, but it's more valuable. Yeah. There's something about like passing on information like you were talking about. Like I told this story recently. It might have been on the podcast, a few podcasts back, whatever. But like when Leo would travel, man, I'd drive to São Paulo to teach class for him. He'd ask me to teach. Right? And I'm like, man, you ask me? Out of all these black belts here, like 20 black belts on the mat, he asks me to teach class for him? I'm honored. The wheels are turning, man. I'm driving. What am I going to teach? I'm going to teach a good class, man. And like never crossed my mind to get paid. Yeah. Never crossed my mind. It wasn't even a thought. I was so honored that I got like 20 world-class black belts on the mat. I'm going to teach them. That's crazy to me, right? What an honor. Some of these, like I get some of my blue belts, purple belts. I ask them to help with the white belts. They don't want to help. It's in their face. They're like disgusted, like I'm taking advantage of them or something. And I'm like, man, like, first of all, that's kind of a dickish thing not to want to help people who need help, right? Regardless if you've been a paying member or not, still help people, man. These people need to learn jiu-jitsu as well. I think people become so selfish and self-centered. They can't fathom the thought of like maybe giving something. And what they're missing out on, going back to what you're saying, is that it actually feels really good to help people and watch them execute the move that you taught them. Man, that's very rewarding. That's way more rewarding. It is more rewarding than the tournament, because the tournament, when you win, is very short-lived. Yeah. You have like a high. It's almost like compared to a drug. It's like, taking a hit. I've never been addicted to drugs, but I imagine you get euphoric for a minute there, and then it goes away and doesn't mean anything anymore after a while. But man, like knowing that you actually impact in someone's life, like that's something that's, I don't know, it stays, man. It's very rewarding. I think if people underestimate the power of that and fulfilling us and giving us satisfaction, true happiness. And yeah, like it's just, we become so individualistic and selfish. Like I literally have purple belts, but like they look at me like I'm taking advantage. Like, oh my God, Robert's such a horrible person asking the purple belt to help the white belt. I think that's shocking, man. Like I don't know what happened to jiu-jitsu. It wasn't like that. Yeah. I used to be honored to help people. Now it's like, oh, I'm too good for everything's below them.
Yeah, I know. Like even when I'm doing classes under you or Marcelo, sometimes you guys pair me off with a white belt. I'm fine with that. We're both going to learn.
I don't like to train with white belts. I'm fine teaching them. Training is a different story.
Yeah. I don't even care that either. As long as I don't get the white belt elbows or whatnot.
It's 1 in 10. People exaggerate. Yeah. 1 in 10 is going to elbow you, pull your hair. Like they're so spazzy and willing to show themselves, prove themselves. Yeah. That they end up like kicking you in the nuts, 3 times in a 5-minute round.
I've been pretty good with that lately, as far as like a lot of it's how you control, because you kind of set the pace as the senior belt. Of course, there's anomalies, but for the most part, if I'm going really chill, people will generally match the energy, right? And especially if you've been cool with them the whole time. If I've been like teaching you as a white belt as a dick, and then we go to roll, you're probably not going to be as nice, right? Yeah. You're probably not going to try to show this guy what's up. Yeah. But if I've been super cool with you doing the drilling and the technique, when we go live, odds are, you're going to probably match my energy.
Yeah.
and that's generally it is. Like, and like I might roll with a white belt. We're going really chill, and then I'm going with you, and now okay, now we're like tournament final mode, whatever, But like you can switch that way, So I feel like it's like you're saying the younger up and coming guys that feel like it's beneath them
because the culture has changed.
Yeah,
they see themselves as professionals. They don't see themselves as students anymore.
But even like in our teams, like we used to have like fight training and stuff like that, where only fighters were there. But then after a certain point, we just integrate them all together, And then of course during sparring sessions, we partner up the fighters or pro level guys together. But nobody's beneath training somebody else, And you'd be surprised what you could learn from just your normal average student, Like I said, I used to have this guy, Jimmy, if he's listening to Mantequilla, that he would get moves from Japanese wrestling video games. And he would tell me, hey, Dave, do you think this will work? And I'm like, well, there's only one way to find out. And I've actually used 2 of his techniques. Yeah. And I remember one of them was a takedown off a single leg. Yeah. And like you're in a low, head inside single, you're getting stuffed down, and you spiral underneath the leg. Yeah. And you spin. And I remember he showed to me, like, it looks like it could work. And I did it to a D1 wrestler twice. Yeah. Boom, and took him down both times. Like, legit.
Okay, so kids at home, he's not suggesting you should not go to the gym and just play video games to learn moves, just in case someone misunderstands what he's saying. No, but I get what you're saying, bro. Like it's, there's something about like sharing that experience with students, man. Like I love teaching, and I'm not crazy about jiu-jitsu politics. I think my biggest beef with jiu-jitsu is like how much the culture has changed, man. Like it's changed. The last 10 years, 20 years, it's gotten very, very, very self-centered. I feel like there's less community, and it's not. I think it's a minority, but because the minority is in the forefront, they're shaping culture. So you can have a minority, but if they're the ones that are constantly being seen by everyone else, that becomes the norm. So the rest of the culture kind of follows suit, right? If you go to most jiu-jitsu gyms, like 99% of your students don't even care about competition. They're just having a good time rolling around. Yep. But they'll still be affected by that culture. Sure. Right? Because that culture, if they see like all the best black belts in the world behaving that way, that's how jiu-jitsu is then. Right? So it's not something that happens very quickly. But I think that, I think sometimes we should kind of take a step back and think more in terms of community and less of individuals. Like people used to give that creonchi, right? You know what creonchi means? Yeah, this trader, right? They got a bad rep. Because I think there's 2 sides to this discussion, right? Like I think loyalty is something that is commendable. I think you should be loyal. That being said, you have to be loyal to the people who are loyal to you as well. There are times I think it's the right thing to do to leave a gym. I've left gyms before, Dave, and I have 0 regrets. I think I did the right thing. It was like I feel like I was given a loyalty to the team that they weren't giving me because they weren't training with me, or I had no one to train with, and I just had to move on. And I think there are moments where that's justified. I think I can justify that, no problem. But there's just something about like the complete lack of loyalty that we have today. It's like the other way around. Now it's like there's like people have 0 guilt. Like I remember when I left gyms, man, this went on for weeks, and I'm like, it's hard. And I'd sit down with my instructor and try to tell him and look him in the eye and tell him why I wasn't going to train with him anymore. Super hard to do. It's hard to do, man. But like I think that's the right thing to do. Like if I'm going to leave, I'm going to tell you why I'm leaving, and it's not personal. It's just that this is what's happening, right?
Yeah.
But today they do it like, man, it's just like changing underwear. It's just like that, boom, gone.
I've been fortunate in the sense that I've never had to leave a team. I've pretty much been.
Oh, your own instructor too, your whole life, right?
Well, in essence, but like, so when I started wrestling, I wrestled with my wrestling coach Tirso Valls, and I remember my senior year, I actually moved to Fort Lauderdale, Weston. So technically, I wasn't supposed to be going to school in Miami with him. And I could have transferred to a different school, which would have actually been an easier regional tournament for me. Because the South Florida region, I guess the South Miami region, the 4 placing in regionals were the same 4 that placed in state. So pretty much it's like, if you can make it out of the regions, you're probably going to place in the state. But I didn't want to leave my coach behind because I felt that was my guy. So I ended up living with my grandmother, who still had her house in Miami, for like the wrestling season, just so I can compete and train with him. And once we got out of that, trained with my Randy Ibarra, who was my brother's shoot fighting, MMA, Valetudo coach. And we trained with him until he moved. And then that's when me and my brother essentially were on our own, and we started our own association. But all the people like I've always affiliated, I'm still in contact with. I'm fortunate that my wrestling coach still trains with us in our gym. He was actually, I think he got to pro belt before he got too busy with life.
There's a way to do it, man. Like you can maintain good, leave a gym and still have a good relationship with everyone. I have a good relationship with every single one of my former coaches. I don't have beef with any of my former training partners or coaches. Not a single one.
But what you're saying is like the proper approach as far as essentially our visions are no longer aligned, right? Because if you're training with a coach or with a team, there's a shared vision, right? Like we want to get to this point and this is how we're going to do it. And unfortunately sometimes we still want to get here, but my path is like this and your path is like this. They're not congruent. And, I'm going to be upset. You're going to be upset at me. This is when we split. And I've had those splits before.
Yeah, it's like a relationship.
Yeah, and it happens sometimes. As long as you're mature about it, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, most people are immature about it. They can't reconcile. Like, how can this person think differently? No, they're just trying to cheat me. They're trying to screw with me. Blah blah blah. And we've seen a lot of those as well. Right?
Oh, there's tons of absolutely.
Yeah, but like device splits. Like I've had one of our fighters who's UFC fighter and all that, but we had a split. He wanted a training camp one way. We wanted it another way. I'm like, you know what?
It's not a fit anymore.
Not a fit anymore.
No, I think that like maturity is the key word here. Like, honestly, man, like I don't get offended at people that don't want to like the way I train. Like I always say this, like I teach the center. I don't teach the margins. I can't teach jiu-jitsu for some people. I have to teach for the majority of the group, right? So if you have a diverse group, you have to think something that's going to work for everyone, right? Some people want different kind of methods, or maybe it's whatever reason. They don't like me. They don't like. I'm fine with that. But like, I think that there's a level of respect that you ought to pay people who instructed you, because you'll have that. The conflict comes down. It goes back to money. That's where the conflict lies, because you have a student-master approach, which is very traditionalist. Let's call it the Japanese approach, right? That hierarchy, like this traditional martial arts, right? I am the sensei, you are the student. If I tell you to go get me water, you sprint.
Yeah,
that's kind of how it was. Like that's how. And on the other end, it's like, oh, I'm a customer. You work for me. I'm paying you, so I outrank you.
Right.
We're in jiu-jitsu in the moment. What we've seen is a conflict of those two hierarchies. They're overlapping each other, right? It's creating a problem because like we don't know who the boss is anymore. Right? Like, this is why I love wrestling, because it's government funded, so you don't have that problem. So if you're a wrestling coach and someone starts acting like an asshole, you tell them to fuck off. Right? Like you can tell them anything. I mean, you can really talk to them any way you want. You can train them any way you want. And if you don't like it, there's someone else. End of debate. Right? There's a hierarchy. That's why it works. In jiu-jitsu, we don't really have that anymore. Like it's changed. Like it's kind of like I'm the boss, but kind of not really. You get students that are whining for belts, and then like all of a sudden as a gym owner, you're under pressure because you don't want to lose a student. Like it's financial too, right? So you worry about these. Like it's so conflicting because you can't. It's not clear who the boss is, who is on top. It's technically, in theory, on the surface, it's the instructor, but the student doesn't see it that way. So when he's like leaves you, he doesn't feel like he owes you anything. I paid you. It's sort of like his mindset, right? Which is true. Like there's a logic there. It's not unreasonable to say that. I just think that jiu-jitsu is more than a business transaction. I feel that way. Maybe other people feel differently. Like I developed a friendship with you, with like other people at the gym. I couldn't just go, oh, by the way, I'm moving cities now. I'm not going to train with you anymore. We don't talk anymore. Yeah. No, we're still friends. Wait a sec. We trained together for 10 years. Like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, to me, that those bonds, they don't break when there's no longer a financial attachment. So if we're not in business anymore, you're not my student and paying me a membership, it doesn't mean that you don't owe me respect. Right? It doesn't like I was your teacher for a long time. I think that's where I think that things get lost, is that people see everything as a business transaction, and not everything should be.
Yeah, it's particularly, it's funny as you mentioned, like that people kind of discommunicate and rewrite history in essence, right? Mm-hmm. I've had students that are now like top fighters and black belts. They train with me since they started. And then there's not a mention of my brother and I in their bio and their history.
That's insane to me. That's so insane to me.
Yeah, and then one of them was interviewed, major podcast, and they asked, how did you get started? And it's like, skipped over. I'm like, so it's like you skipped over your origin story,
Yeah.
you know? It's like, man, that's kind of weird. You know, it's kind of a weird thing to do. Like, even if you were upset at somebody, to pretend that they didn't have any role in your life, you know?
It's called the erasing of history.
Yeah.
Orwell's memory hole. That's what he called it. It's gone. It's like you erase it because it's not convenient. You know.
Yeah. So, and yeah, I've seen that quite a bit. You know, I'm sure you have as well. It's like people try to pretend like you didn't have a role in their life or whatnot. You know, it's kind of weird.
It is.
Weird.
It's. I think it's
Because
inhuman almost. It's like
yeah,
it means like, what are you, a robot or something? Like
yeah,
it's unethical, I believe. But again, it's our fault. I think anyone who
sure,
has an expectation is the one who's at fault, because we ought to know better.
yeah,
If you're giving, it's giving.
yeah.
There's no expectation. Who taught me that was Liborio.
Mm,
I was having this conversation with him years ago, and he just went like that. Like, give. Went like that. Give. Donate. That's it. Give it. It's a gift. That was it. And it was like one of those light bulb moments. I'm like, okay, I'm wrong. I'm expecting loyalty. Like, you shouldn't expect. It's nice if you receive it. I think you ought to give it. But that's you. You can't control what other people do. You give. You do your part. If other people are going to do their part, you can't control that. Like, why are you worried about it?
yeah,
Like, am I going to stop giving? Maybe I should. I think you should be more selective about who you give to.
sure.
I think that should happen. But I don't think you should stop giving because, most people won't appreciate it. Like, no, man, I don't know, there's a part of me that is stubborn and being hopeful. You don't want to be too cynical, I guess.
No, it can be easy too when you deal with a lot of
Yeah.
people who unfortunately take advantage or
Yeah.
they mistreat the relationship and they're like kind of like people who get jaded from bad relationships. Like, oh no,
Yeah,
no, every
yeah.
relationship is
Yeah.
shitty. Like, no, you've been looking in the wrong places. Wrong character flaws. Like, you have to find the right people, and
Yeah.
they're out there. So it's the same thing as far as I think
Tinder?
teaching.
Tinder? Don't go on Tinder. Don't go on Tinder. I've used Tinder before. It's a nightmare. No, but in Vegas it is a shit. You don't want to go on Tinder. But man, like, no, you're right. Like, it's you can be easily become jaded over all this, and I think that's part of the struggle. It's been like a constant. Like, I've been thinking a lot about this. Like, it is almost like an internal fight that you fight. For not allowing the negativity or allowing the bad experience to shape how you see the world. Because I think to some extent it should, but you got to keep a balance between, I call it the balance between hope and cynicism. You can't have, if you're too cynical, you're going to be sad. If you're too hopeful, you're going to be disappointed. They're both bad. You need a little bit of both.
Yeah, you need to be a little realistic, right?
Yeah.
I tend to be on the optimistic side of things.
Yeah. No, that's a good, it's a good place to be. You just have to balance it, because if you're too optimistic, you're gonna walk out there with your hands down into a fight. The world's a fight, man. You got to keep your hands up.
Oh, for sure.
It's a fight. And the other thing, you should almost approach, like, and I've always approached like, oh man, I get my hands down. Like, now I sort of approach people. I think I'm wise if I kind of walk up to people like, all right, what is this gonna be about?
Your hand up like this, just in case.
Yeah, I'm just in case. And if I see you putting your hands down, I'm like, okay, we're putting our hands down. But I think it's almost like a better approach that you start relationships with your hands way up high, and then put your guard down as they develop. I think that's safer. At least you don't get hit. Because I'm not going to hit you, but I just want to make sure that I don't get hit back, right?
Yeah.
Because, man, like, it's, especially with money, man, like, people getting greedy. Like, it's very, very unethical. You know what, it dawned on me, and I've used this example multiple times before, on how unethical the world has become. It's getting worse. I know it sounds old, but, like, it is getting worse. There are people in this world that look up to Pablo Escobar. Can you believe that? I'm serious. I saw the other day, I was walking, like, I don't remember where I was. I saw this kid, he was wearing a shirt that had Pablo Escobar's, like, face on it. I'm like, holy shit, Pablo Escobar is a hero to America's youth. You know, like, let that shit sink in.
Might as well put like a Ted Bundy shirt on.
Yeah, like Adolf Hitler, like, why not? Like, while we're at it, like Genghis Khan, it's just like, wow, that's the kind of person you admire, you want to emulate in your life. It is, right? Because it's like, made money, so everything is permissible. Like, you got to draw the line somewhere. I like money too, but shit, I'm not willing to do anything for money.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, it's like you were saying, essentially the value system has skewed a lot. And I think coming back to something you were mentioning earlier, as far as like martial art influencers, it does have an effect when you have your top guys like Conor McGregor. Like
Yeah.
to say he hasn't had a cultural impact is a massive
No, yeah,
understatement.
absolutely.
He's shifted the whole landscape into being more sensational, more over the top, and as martial artists for the culture, that's a minus, On the business, it's a plus.
Yeah.
But once again, then you have these
It's
battling.
plus for him too, though. Like, I mean, how many? Yeah, do more people, maybe more fighters on average make more because of him, possibly. But like, you got to see, like, he's benefited. 90% of the benefits of that have gone to him and the UFC.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe the other fighters benefited the fat, like the leftovers,
Yeah. But like that, he essentially has changed a lot. Even in grappling and stuff, you've seen how that, what I call the McGregor effect, has, dribbled down there. Where now, like, I thought it was kind of silly when they made a thing between Mikey Musumeci and Gio Martinez.
Yeah, I followed that briefly.
Yeah, I didn't really understand what happened, but I see it's almost impossible for like someone like Musumeci to be upset. You know what I mean?
I know. That's what surprised a lot of people, because you saw how pissed he was.
Yeah.
And you've never seen him anything but with a smile on his face.
Yeah, and that didn't make any sense to me. I guess he got offended because Gio didn't want to be his friend or whatever. I'm like, at the same time,
they just got out of a fight. That's understandable.
Yeah, like, and this is some people. Oh, they're not fighting. It depends, man. Like, to me, like, I've played flag football games that were like a fight. Like,
fight is a subjective word.
It's your mentality, how you approach things. Yeah. Like, I remember. This is a funny story. I was playing football with some college buddies, and they were doing like mechanical engineers versus civil engineers or electrical engineers. I was in the electrical engineering team, which are typically nerdy kids, right? And it was essentially 4 stick-figured characters, and then me going against a bunch of mechanical engineers, which were more broad guys. And I'm like, oh, we're playing flag football, whatever. But I see one of just boom lay out one of my guys. I'm like, oh, it's on now. Yeah. So like it was tackle pretty much at that point. I was like running people over, and like 4 people had to get on me to try to rip the flag out. And it became very physical. And my buddies afterwards like, damn dude, that was very aggressive. I'm like, it's probably why I don't play football. Yeah. Like every time I compete, especially if it's a physical sport, I'm gonna be doing everything I can to win, within the rule set. So like when you say, oh, grappling's not a fight, like, man, I've been hurt more grappling than I have been in fighting.
Strike, yeah, no, 100%. And here's the thing, it's not that's not a definition of fighting. Like, because I've gotten to have this debate so many times with people, because they get upset if you say, okay, like grappling is fighting. I'm like, look it up in a dictionary. Simple. Just end of debate. Just read the definition of a fight in a dictionary, and your definition of fight is the one that doesn't apply to the dictionary. So you're the one who has an odd definition of fighting. You got to write your own dictionary, buddy. Like, I'm going by what the Oxford Dictionary says. What we do is a fight. Not to mention, one could fight cancer.
Yeah.
One could fight traffic, I suppose. One could fight there's a million different things. I mean, fighting is a very broad word. It is a fight. It's just, it doesn't necessarily, I think the strikers are the ones that get bugged by this. That's what I noticed, because they see punching is a fight. Oh, choking someone out isn't? That's a pretty dumb definition. It's like, oh, you have to be punching someone for it to be a fight. So if I'm trying to choke you to death, that's not a fight.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't ring to me, because to me, that I always saw fighting as, like you said,
literal. Yeah, like you're struggling. Yeah,
it's a struggle. It's whatever you take Contest. It as mentally. Like, that's why, like, I always compete till like I'll be dead, right? So everything's a fight to me. Yeah. I've like I said, I was playing that flag football game like it was a fight. I was going all out. Yeah. So it's kind of, to me, it's almost insulting. You're saying, well, I'm not fighting, because I get some people play sports like it's a game, but like, you're not on my level. Yeah. You're not seeing things the way I see. I don't play sports like a game. I play to win, yeah. I play for keeps. You know what I mean? Like Doc Holliday is playing for blood. Like, that's when I compete. That's what it's about. I'm coming in for everything.
And that's good.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's intense, but
it's fulfilling.
Yeah.
And also for the person who loses, it's also good, because they're going to learn something.
Yeah.
It's merit. There's merit there. Like, I'm not one of those like, oh, just compete for the fun of it. Like, you can if you want. That's one way of doing it. But I think competing to make progress is more fulfilling.
For sure. Yeah, and you also, if you're competing that way, chances are you're training to support that style of competition. And even if you do lose, there's no regret, right? You're like, well, I wasn't the better man today, but I did everything I could. I've lost matches where I'm like, when I lost to you, I'm like, well, I did what I could, man. Like I gave it all, and freaking long ass arms got me that. I remember because
it's my only takedown too, by the way.
I love underhooking people off shots and catching shots. And normally when I could get that underhook, I can pull you up.
Yeah.
But your arms wrapped completely around me with the underhook and the double. I was like, oh shit! And you just dragged me down into a half guard, I think.
David's being he's being generous. For those of you who don't know the real story, the whole story, Dave had a 30 or 40-minute war with Sean.
No, it was 25 minutes.
25 minutes, but it was a war, a wrestling, right? Mostly, right? It was like a lot of takedowns.
Well, no,
I remember vaguely the fight.
I'm not going to use that as that's not why I lost to you. I lost to you because you took me down. Because my cardio was on point. That's why I remember I told you. I think we talked about the last podcast when I was going against Zanji. I knew. Well, I was counting on 20-minute match, double overtime, but easy. And I also knew what I was dealing with. Because I had no grips. I didn't train grips at all. So I remember when I was trying to submit even the first guy I grappled with on day one, my submissions were off. Like I could barely grab anything. I'm like, well, I'm not submitting anyone today. It's going to be all points. But my legs were great because that was after my Bodog fight. So I remember I had my hand messed up. I had a messed up knee and a popped rib. So I wasn't grappling. I was running. I ran 7 miles a day. So my cardio was amazing. That's why, like, when I got barely any rest between that match and when I went with you, but it didn't affect me. Because I was like, my cardio was never an issue.
It was still a lot, man.
It was the only issue I was going to have was technically. And, that's what got me. I don't grapple people usually that tall. So I know
that
now.
Throws you off, man.
It does.
It does throw you off.
Because even though like we're sitting here and I look, you look at the camera, it look like I'm taller than Robert. I'm not.
It's because I'm like super large. No, actually, but you have like I got long legs. My upper body is not that.
I have it. Yeah,
we're about the same height, upper body wise.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. So I've actually had
my
this
chair might be
analyzed.
I don't know, but like I have long legs. That's where
my torso is really tall.
Yeah,
I have short legs because I've noticed this now mechanically because the way I deadlift is affected by my like. Most people, when they deadlift, there's a lot of hamstring. I get minimal hamstring activation. Me, it's all hip hinge. So, like, everything's a little bit different from that body mechanic. But regardless, grappling with someone taller, like, I love underhooks. But underhooks suck against taller guys because you can't really bear them down as much. So they get the big overhook on you, or they can reach over. But, like, in Miami, I'm dealing with my team I was always the heaviest guy on my team, which doesn't make
throws you off. It's different.
It's different. So like my pace is also revolved around that. It's very fast paced, and I play loose and fast usually, which is opposite of somebody
in the heavier divisions.
In the heavier divisions that is usually playing tight. So there's pros and cons to it. But like fatigue wise, I've rarely had issues in training. In competition rather. Like I've always known like early on that was my advantage. I knew like I could gas people out, and like especially when technically, because like guard passing a lot is an issue of attrition, right? Like when someone's guard's fresh, generally you're not going to pass it.
You got to break them.
You got to break them, right? Yeah. And I always felt guard passing for me was kind of like that scene in the Matrix when they're trying to hack into Morpheus's brain. It's just a matter of time, right? I just got to keep grinding.
Yeah.
So with people like I just need to be able to stay on top and grind. I'm not going to get tired. I know I'll get them a little bit more.
They'll break before I do. I tell myself the same thing. They'll break before I do.
Yeah, they're gonna break,
especially in the heavier divisions.
Yeah.
But the height thing it's so funny you say that because I had the same problem in Brazil. Like my tallest training partner was Damian Maia. Everyone else was shorter than me. Comprito was my height and weight, but he lived in Rio, so I only trained with him maybe 3-4 times a year, really. Everyone else was like middleweight, lightweight, and I'm like super heavy. I'm like 100 kilos, and most of my training partners are 80, 85. That's a lot, man. We're talking like 35-pound difference. And not only that, they're like, they're a lot shorter than me too. So all of a sudden, I'm fighting Roger, who's like half a foot taller, right? He was like
He's that tall?
Dude, I feel, I don't know how tall, but I feel like he's a good, I'm looking up, you know? I'm so tainted because I'm used to like looking, when I grapple people, I'm always the tallest person.
Because you're like, what, 6'2"?
6'3".
6'3".
So he's got to be at least 6'6". I don't know.
Jesus Christ.
Minimum. I feel like it throws me off, right? And I'm not just, like, it's just very strange to grapple with someone that has a style that has nothing to do with what you're used to in the gym every day. This is where, and I've always been an advocate, like you don't need a lot of training partners, but I think every now and then it's good to have someone that is, if you have like, don't have a big pool of guys who all feel the same and fight the same, every now and then you're going to be thrown off in competition.
Yeah.
You're going to find that one guy that has a style or some athletic ability or height, whatever it is, it's going to throw you off. And it's something you could have adjusted to after you got taken down or your guard passed 2-3 times. It's like a vaccine, you know, like now I'm adjusted. I've assimilated what you're doing. I just have to make these adjustments and I'm good to go. But you gotta eat shit for a little bit until you make those adjustments. You can't do that in competition.
Yeah.
It's on the go. You gotta like on the spot, very quick. Yeah, man, that's and I imagine like, you know, if you're that tall, like you don't have that same experience on the other end.
Sure, yeah. Like
but if like, here's the thing, like you might have felt less going against a guy like Roger than I did. No, because you have shorter opponents, but someone who is used to, but from someone's like a middleweight that is used to going against tall people, might have felt it less
than you did.
Than someone like me who's never grappled anyone. I mean, other than like blue belt every now and then, but like I've never had someone better and taller than me to grapple with.
No, it's funny because, and the same token, the worst matchup I hate to go up against grappling, it's another wrestler.
Short, stocky.
Yeah, I'm like, shit.
Because it's a bad matchup for your style.
Yeah, because now it's like, well, back in the day, I remember like when my brother and I were starting, we were like the wrestlers.
Yeah.
And people might not know this, I only wrestled in high school.
Yeah.
I never even made state. So like, I wasn't like a world-class wrestler. I was just...
But you were better than 99.9% of the guys that are in grappling tournaments.
Yeah. Back then, I was like a... Dan Gable, pretty much, right?
They thought you were an Olympian, yeah.
It was George Pereira. Called me black belt wrestler. I'm not even like...
Thank you.
I think it was supposed to be an insult, but I took it as a compliment. Okay. But, yeah, so I think one of my first tough matches with another really good wrestler was Jay Heron, or Jay Hieronymus. He used to train here, I think, in Vegas.
What's his name again?
Jay Heron. He used to...
Heron, yeah.
I remember I fought him in a grapples course in the first round, and it was the first time that I had to play more off my back because
he's a good wrestler.
He's a really good wrestler, and I wasn't used to it. Like you said, like I was always a dominant wrestler. So I'm like, okay, no, I got in there, and like I think he got the first takedown or whatnot. And then I ended up getting him an armbar, but like it was like one of those rare moments where I played off my back, you know. And then another tough wrestling match, but I knew I was gonna have was Dave Terrell.
Dude, people say that Dave Terrell was a monster. I never rolled with him. I know who he is. Yeah. But they say that back in the day, he was a monster, man.
He was really good. So my match with him was supposed to be like the unofficial best U.S. grappler at that time for like 200 pounds. I ended up losing to him by a takedown or two. I think it was 2 takedowns. But it was like ADCC rules. First 10 minutes, no score. Last 10 minutes, score. So the first 10 minutes were very strategic. You know, like we measured ourselves out a little bit. I pulled guard just to see how he would work on passing or whatnot. And then we got into a good match. I had a few close takedowns. He scored one good ankle pick. Almost had me in a couple like Darce chokes and whatnot. I threw a flying triangle at the end, and like I always do in a heel hook. It was a good scrap. I mean, he was legit. You know, I remember. I think this was before he fought. He took a bronze in the ADCC. I know he got Ricardo Almeida with a flying heel hook, you know, which
flying straight foot lock. I think he like jumped over and he landed like face down on the foot lock.
Yeah,
I remember I was there, 2003.
So I remember that was a match I was nervous.
That might be probably the most intense, baddest, sickest submission. Seriously, I don't think I've ever seen a better submission in my life.
Yeah,
because he is like a flying foot lock. How do we even do that? Like, it's never been replicated. I've never seen anyone else do it.
Especially that early on, you know, because I mean that's early for leg locks.
Yes, it's very. I think we can't train that. He improvised, but he was like in a single with the ankle.
Yeah.
and then he just threw himself in the air, like threw his leg over.
You reached and
yes, and landed face down. Like, dude, brutal, man. I think he broke his foot. I mean, certainly, there's no time to tap. There's no way he didn't get hurt from that because he landed like face down, straight foot lock. Beautiful.
Oh, yeah, so he was definitely legit. So yeah, I remember those. But to your point, long story short, when you go against styles that you're not used to, or maybe the styles that you're used to dominating, and then you get challenged, it throws you off big time. You know what I mean? Because now, like you're saying, if you're tall and then someone is suddenly taller than you, it's like a whole crap.
The only way is if you're able to impose your A game right off the bat and never fight them in their world.
Yeah.
And that requires like aggression, intensity, confidence, lack of no hesitation. Just go full force, impose your world. And I think that would be like, because if you get into a strategical fight with someone like that, you're gonna be thrown off. I think you have to wait. The only way you could counter someone, you're like, it's a very odd style for you, is just like right off the gate, impose your style. Don't give them a chance to even come close, to put it setting up their game.
Yeah, it's kind of like in I always say in wrestling, they always say always make first contact.
Yeah.
MMA or fighting, always get the first hit in. You want to start imposing your will right away, and that's more towards like the strategic element of things, but it's super crucial.
Yeah, psychological.
Yeah,
too.
Psychological is super important. You see it happen fighting all the time. Like they measure yourself out for like 1 minute. Sometimes you see like 3-4 minutes. I forgot which fight it was. It was like one of the heavyweights. I think it was like Derek Lewis and Nagano and whatnot, where it was like I'm not sure if I'm thinking of the right fight, but there was one fight where like it was like maybe 10 punches thrown in the first round. He's like, these people are so gun shy because they know like once they start opening up,
it's the heavyweight division. It's I get it, man. Like this is why like sometimes like women's fight can be more exciting because they don't hit as hard to knock each other out.
There's more room for error.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's like they can bang. Like I mean, the heavyweight division, man, it takes one.
Yeah.
That's it. Get clipped.
Not even one clean, just like one anywhere.
They hit so hard. The brain is the same, man. Like your brain is about the same size, but like the amount of damage it can take doesn't change. But like the size of the impact on the other end, like that's huge.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dave, I gotta get going, man. I got work day, but let's do this. Today is Thursday. Let's do this and then next week again. I'll be in town. Awesome. For another one. All right. Yeah. Awesome, guys. See you guys next time. Thank you for everything. Thank you for watching. And see you again. Ciao.